good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another live broadcast from Biosphere 2. We're coming to you from inside the rainforest today, and my name is John Adams. I'm Deputy Director here at Biosphere 2. And like so many places, we have significantly reduced our on-site staff per the guidelines that the University of Arizona has put out, as well as the state and the CDC. I can assure you, we do have we have a few folks that are here on a daily basis just to make sure that all of our living systems are doing what they're supposed to be doing to keep these amazing systems up and running, so that when we're able to resume research from inside Biosphere 2, we're ready to go and be able to not miss and capture everything that we can. So again, this is our tropical rainforest, and this tropical system has been in place for nearly 30 years. So if you remember, Biosphere 2 was built in the late 80s, early 90s. People were actually sealed inside the facility starting in September of 1991. And so if you can think of it, this is when the rainforest was locked up. Now, they collected species from throughout South America and a number of different tropical regions and zones to compile what you see inside here today. But when they assembled not only the rainforest, but many of the other systems inside Biosphere 2, they anticipated that once they closed the doors, that there was going to be a loss of species just through natural processes. Some species would do well, other species would not, because it was either too hot, not humid enough, and so they wanted to be able to continue to have a really diverse community 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, like what we have today. And so when they put these systems in place, the rainforest in particular, they packed in nearly 400 different species just in this one system alone of plants. Now today, we've had students do surveys. Most recently, one of our PhD candidates, who just recently got his PhD, resurveyed the Biosphere 2 rainforest. And a system that started out with over 400 plant species, we had just over 100, or just under 100 species. Now, when you hear that, you say, wow, 75% loss, that's a lot. But still, look around behind me. You can see just the number of plants, the density of the foliage in here. And again, it was anticipated that you would have this type of loss. Now, I can tell you that that loss occurred pretty early on in the rainforest history. So from 91 to 94, 1995 is when you saw the greatest number of species lost. And then in these out years, the system really came into a very stable state, and we had very little loss from year to year, whereas today now, we almost have no species loss. And so what's really exciting about this from a research perspective is now we've got a very stable community, and the conditions that we change within the system and the responses that we can see, we can attribute those actually to those changes, and not because the system is still going through some periodic stabilization period. So again, welcome to our social media live from inside Biosphere 2. My name is John Adams. I'm Deputy Director here at Biosphere 2, and we're inside the Biosphere 2 rainforest for those of you who just joined us. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, please go ahead and shoot them our way. We'll do our best to answer them in this session here, or we'll follow up with you and answer them at a little bit later time. Now, one of the most common questions we get asked is, what else is inside the rainforest besides the plants that you see around me here? Well, if you look really close in certain areas, one of the most dominant organisms you're going to see are ants. So this particular variety of ant is an ant that was accidentally introduced inside Biosphere 2. Its name is called a crazy ant. Its genus and species is Parentechinus longicornis, and they are the dominant organism inside Biosphere 2. They outcompeted virtually all other insects. But if you look close too, oftentimes, and especially at night if you come in here, you're going to see roaches inside here. So there's 3 different species that we have. If you're to dig into the soil, you're going to find roundworms and flatworms. You're going to see some millipedes. If you look closely, let's see if I can find some here. So here's a couple of leaves. In one, you can see all the cellulose material is gone. The other one is just starting to decompose. But what's responsible for this is a whole community, a whole microbiome that's decomposing. So we've got a very healthy decomposing community inside this system. Some of the other things that we have that you typically find inside rainforest We have mosquitoes, so we do have mosquitoes inside here. Not a lot of them, but from time to time there are quite a few. If you look around, you're going to see a spider web here and there, so we have a couple different types of spiders. Some of our researchers, in fact one of our lead researchers in here, did see a scorpion. We do have some tree frogs inside here. We have a lizard that's called an alligator lizard that you'll see inside this system. But other than that, those are about the largest types of organisms. So there aren't any birds, there are no primates, for example. You're not going to see a jaguar coming through the forest floor here. And one of the other common questions we get, well, is how can you do research in a rainforest without all of these other things, just the soils and the plants? Well, and that's a great question. And I think that really goes to one of the fundamental principles that Biosphere 2 was founded on, and I think one of the basic lessons or most important lessons, from my opinion, one can say, and that is that there is no true replica for Earth systems. And by building Biosphere 2, it really showed us how little we understand Earth systems and how infinitely complex they are and how difficult they are to assemble in a manner that represents that you find on the outside. But what's great about this system is I can control this entire atmosphere. So I can come inside here and I can say, let's crank up the temperature and see what's happening. Let's reduce the humidity. Let's not give it any rain for 70 days. And we did that exact experiment here this past winter, where we had a number of scientists from across the world come in and we subjected our rainforest to a drought. And we were really excited to see its response, and they're just beginning to process that data and push that data out in the form of publications. One of the other experiments we've done in here is we changed the CO2. So we think of rainforest as essentially the lungs of the earth. We hear that often, right? So they give off lots of oxygen, they take in lots of carbon dioxide. Well, at what point do these systems begin to saturate? When do you reach the capacity for them to continue to absorb CO2? And so this is really important, because as we continue to see that the global amount of atmospheric CO2 increase, so today we're about 400 parts per million. When I started at Biosphere over 20 years ago, the value was 365. They predict that we're going to go from today's value, remember 400, up to about 800 in maybe about 100 years. And so if we're using plants as a mitigating factor, which they do a great job at, but at what point do you saturate them? So a recent publication that came out of our rainforest system is we did exactly that. We took it through different levels of CO2, and we found that this system saturates at 600 parts per million. That's only 200 above what we are today, and likely a value that we're going to potentially reach, we'll say roughly 50 years. And so what that does is it allows people to better model how these systems are going to behave and respond. And this experiment was done directly because there was a model that predicted that. And what we were able to do is run our system through it and see if the model results matched what we were observing. And what we were able to find is yes, they did. So model validation and calibration is one of the really unique attributes of Biosphere 2. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm going to tell you a little bit. We've got an event coming up on April 22nd, and the significance of this date, that's a Wednesday, is it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And so since we can't come and invite you all here, what we're going to do is we're going to do it virtually. And so we're lining up a panel discussion that's going to talk about our rainforest systems. We're going to have a couple of other panel discussions that are going to talk about other systems inside Biosphere 2. We're going to have some special tours that we're going to do virtually for you in our rainforest and in our ocean areas. So be on the lookout for more information. We're going to put out a schedule where we'll talk about all of those activities that we're hoping to line up, and hopefully you'll be able to join us on those days. So again, mark on your calendars, Wednesday, April 22nd. Remember, it's the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, and we're going to be celebrating that, but we're going to call it Earth Fest here inside Biosphere 2. So again, my name is John Adams. Thank you for joining us for this session of our live post inside Biosphere 2. And again, if you have any questions that you think of afterwards, go ahead and post them. Otherwise, we'll see you later this week for another posting inside Biosphere 2.